associate this morning. Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Honolulu. Unitarian Universalism is a progressive, inclusive faith, and whatever you believe about God or don't, you will be welcomed here and challenged to become your best self. We are guided by moral principles and draw inspiration from science, history, and all world religions, and we put our values into action. As we gather in worship today, we celebrate our connections with one another, with our higher purpose, and with the mystery of life. As we begin to center ourselves for worship, please take a moment to ensure that your electronic devices are silenced. We are a vibrant and growing and busy community. We're working to boldly grow compassion, justice, and joy. Please take a moment to read the announcements that are in your newsletter, on our website, and printed in your order of service this morning. I would like to draw your attention to a few particular announcements this morning. As some of you may know, it is Second Sunday Lunch Day, which means that we will have a delicious lunch after this service. It is also Pledge Sunday, which Jonipher will talk a little bit more later on in our service, but as a hint, if you fill out your pledge forms today, you can get free Sunday lunch. I also want to make a correction that was in our e-blast. It had said that our first step to membership about our church would be today, but it will actually be held next week on March 16th at 12:30 in the Fred Harper Room. Today, however, we will have step 2 to membership with Jonipher in his office at 12:30. So if you're interested in that, please talk to Jonipher after service. And as I said, we are a vibrant community. We're a beloved community. And we're able to be so because of each and every one of us contribute in different ways. We contribute time, talent, and monetary donations. And we work on different teams, volunteering our time and services. So we've taken some time over the past few months during service to pause and thank these volunteers that make up the teams to allow our church to operate. And this morning, we want to honor the chair of the Ohana Covenant team, who is Matthew Graves, and he's here if he could rise so we could thank you. Matthew works to serve as the liaison between our Ohana Covenant groups. Oh, we were doing it early. We were hoping to catch him. So if you guys see him upstairs or after service, please thank him. Matt works incredibly hard to serve as the liaison between our Ohana Covenant groups and Jonipher to help people who want to start new groups and also to train facilitators for those groups. So he does a lot of work, and please be sure to thank him if you see him. And as Eve comes up and lights our chalice, please join me in saying, "We light this chalice with the embers of compassion. We light this chalice with the torch of justice. We light this chalice with the radiance of joy."
Sometimes something is special because you have to wait for it. For example, would you like to have a birthday every day? What if you had to eat cake, breakfast, lunch, and supper every day? You'd get awfully tired of it. Well, sad. Well, the story I'm going to tell you is a story about someone who was waiting for a letter. And in the old days, they didn't have junk mail, and they didn't have email. So waiting for a letter was a special thing. You wouldn't get so many of them and have to delete them. So this is Frog and Toad. You know Frog and Toad. They're friends, right? Well, one day Frog was walking by Toad's house, and he saw Toad sitting on his porch, and he was looking very glum and sad. And Frog said, "Toad, why are you feeling so sad?" And Toad said, "I wait every day for the mail to come, and I never get a letter." "Well, I'll wait with you." So Frog sat on the porch with his friend Toad, and they sat, and they sat. And then Frog said, "I have an idea, but I have to go home and do something." So Frog went home, and you know what he did? He did. He got out a pencil and paper and an envelope, and he wrote a letter to Toad. And he put it in an envelope, and it said, "To my friend Toad." And he went outside, and he saw Snail walking by, the original snail mail. And he said, "Snail, would you deliver this letter to my friend Toad?" And Toad said, "Of course, right away." So Frog went back to Toad's house, and he saw Toad in bed taking a nap. "What are you doing in bed? Aren't you waiting for your mail?" "No, I'm never going to get any letters. I never have, and I never will." "Well, you might today." And Frog went out to look at the outside and out the window and didn't see Snail. He said, "Well, you still might get one today." No." "Well, why do you keep going to the window, Frog?" "Because I think you're going to get a letter. I wrote you one." "You did? Well, then, let's go outside." And so they both sat on the porch for a while, and they waited, and they waited, and they waited. No letter. Toad said, "Frog, what did you say in your letter?" "I said, 'Dear Toad, you are my best friend, your friend, Frog.'" "Oh, that was a great letter." And they sat and they waited for 4 days. Finally, the letter came, and Toad was very happy to get it. Upstairs, the younger children will be talking about acceptance, the other ones love, and the teens cooperation. Let's sing our children out.
Make a bridge and sing our children off to their classes.
Let's do that.
Our opening words this morning come to us from Karen Bellavance Grace. In praise of computers and routers and servers and all the hardware and software that can help us build our connectedness. In praise of all the gremlins that live in the machines and bug our programs and help us to practice patience. In praise of the trolls who dwell in the internet and push us to live our first principle in real time. In praise of power surges that eat our data and devour our final draft, for giving us the opportunity to rebuild and remember that our work is as much transient as it is transcendent. In praise of the error, page not found, which reminds us that with some people, we need to find new paths to make connections, because not everyone uses the same keywords. In praise of servers that drop our connections, which remind us that all who serve have built-in limits in their capacity. In praise of communication and connection, whether it is face-to-face or Facebook to Facebook. We always risk errors, hurt feelings, misunderstandings, but it is also always worth the risk. Amen.
Everything is moral. Everything is spiritual. And therefore, everything is great and majestic, and all times are moral. The holy eventide also, its cooling breeze, its falling shade, its hushed and sober hour, the sultry noontide, too, and the solemn midnight. All these, as they pass, touch by turns the springs of the spiritual life in us and conduct that life towards good. The very passing of time, without reference to times or seasons, is moral. Time hastens onwards because we are wisely and well employed. It lingers. It hangs heavily upon us because our minds are unfurnished or are unoccupied with good thoughts. If we could see that all is designed for spiritual ends. Indeed, over the years, throughout human history, we have been on the quest to improve our daily lives. And one of the ways that we've been trying to do this is using this tool and the device known as technology. And there's so many ways and avenues that I could talk about technology that I've decided that I'm going to split it up into 3 parts. After all, I received so many emails from all of you with your suggestions as to how I should construct my sermon. So I want to say a gigantic mahalo to everyone who has given me their links to NPR, their links to other posts and articles about the use of technology. And I must say, it's almost impossible to be able to talk about it in just 15 minutes. So today, I'm just going to give you a tiny glimpse of it and talk a little bit about what it means to live in a rapidly changing techie world. All right? And next week, we'll dive a little deeper and take a look at what the spiritual implications are. And can we come up with a theology, or a theology, if you will, on what technology means in our lives? And finally, you may say to yourselves, well, I don't really feel like technology is all good. There's some pretty bad, evil stuff that's out there in the cyber world as well, such as hacking, for example, or other evils that may exist. So can we take a look at some of the darker side to technology and talk about the morality and the ethics of technology? Sound good? All right, so that just means you'll have to keep coming back for the next 2 more weeks at least to get a fuller picture, of what this whole topic and conversation about technology is all about. So getting back to this whole idea of the history of it, as we know, the world has been on a quest on learning more efficient ways to communicate our message across, not just through distance, but through time as well. So back during 6,000 years ago, I should say, human beings have formulated this great invention. And it is a way for us to put words to our thoughts and to our stories. And so 6,000 years ago, the written word was founded. That was a huge, giant step in terms of technological advancement. Well, something else, though, ushered us from the Dark Ages to the Renaissance. What was this something else? What was the major technological breakthrough that happened? Printing press. So the Gutenberg press was invented at the time, and this revolutionized and democratized people's access to books, as we know, And without it, the Bible would not have been readily accessible to the masses, and the priestly class would have had a monopoly on its reading and interpretation. And guess what happened once the Bible got democratized? Once the good word actually spread around, people like Michael Servetus came up with this book called, oh my gosh, OMG. There was an error on the Trinity because that word cannot be found anywhere in the Bible. So he became one of the first Unitarian martyrs because of this new revolution in communication. And indeed, I'd like to think that as the Enlightenment came along and as other movements came along, that has been the result of this opening up of the minds, we Unitarian Universalists have ridden that wave of technological innovation. Well, fast forward to 50 years ago, because I'm sure none of you were around 6,000 years ago or even during the Gutenberg press invention, yeah? Would anybody care to admit that they've been around back then? Anyway, so did someone say yes? Did you say yes, Steve? Was that a past life that you're referring to? The transmigration of your soul from way back when?
We'll always be good friends because I'm half deaf.
All right. So 50 years ago, the Reverend Deborah Von Upson shared with me on her sermon for the Ministerial Fellowshipping Committee. She said that her father, 50 years ago, came up with a sermon for his late lad congregation for the fellowship. And the sermon title was The Electronic Revolution. So even back then, there was already talk about what it means for us if suddenly our world were run by our appliances and by this newfangled device at the time called a computer. And remember those punch cards that you have to stick in order for this computer to work? Or even those tape players and floppy disk? Some of the young people are looking at me like, what are those? But yes, they did exist at one point. And guess what? Reverend Von Upson's father said that the electronic revolution would bring about so much efficiency that we'd all just be looking at our navel, gazing all day, because we'd have so much free time. Because the computer is doing all the work for us. And the computer would allow us to spend so much more time with our family over dinner, and so much more time doing community projects and church volunteer work. Yes. And we all know that prediction came about, right? And little did Reverend Von Upson's dad, however, know that Al Gore would one day invent the internet. And that we would be sitting here today and enjoying the benefits of this newfangled invention. Well, fast forward once again to 2014. Where are we in terms of the communication revolution that was predicted? Instead of giving you more facts and figures, however, I'm not going to show off and try to impress you with how I can memorize facts and figures. I'm going to show you a 3-minute clip on what the social media revolution is all about. Some pretty startling statistics. So, Steve, do you have another 123 years? I know you've been around for a while to finish reading Wikipedia. All right, that's what it'll take, yeah? So, as we could tell, some of us may have gotten a little uncomfortable around those statistics because we think to ourselves, I have trouble even finding the power button on my computer, let alone being able to engage in social media the way that we ought to engage with it. But however, there was also some pretty startling statistics in there. One that really got to me was that one that said over 50% of the world's population consists of people under 30 years of age. That's around 3.5 billion people in this world are under 30 years of age. So we have to start asking ourselves, if we as a church are going to remain relevant, if we are going to be able to communicate with the next generation, if we are going to make sure that we are able to transmit our values and our principles to future Unitarian Universalists, what are we going to do to reach out to this world? And when are we going to start speaking their language? Now, I may not be the most well-qualified person to talk about this, believe it or not. I know some of you are looking at me like, what do you mean, Reverend Jonipher? You have introduced so much new technology to us. It's making our heads spin. You're asking us to learn yet one more Google product? What are you, being paid by Google or something? Anyway, to that I say, I'm actually a fairly late bloomer. I'm no spring chicken. I'm not under 30 anymore, so I don't even belong in that category of 50% of the world's population under 30. I didn't even learn how to use a computer until 9 years old. Unlike some of those kindergartners who are using an iPad instead of a blackboard. And you know, the Corsi kids know all about this. That before they even picked up a pacifier, they picked up a keyboard. Yeah? So, this is the generation that we are talking about. And I'm not even an early adopter. Believe it or not, I never stood 6 hours outside of Best Buy waiting for the first iPhone or iPad to come out. Now, if it were free, that would be a different story. But if I had to pay for it, I would not even spend 6 hours doing that. And let's talk about Facebook. Back in 2008, I resisted going on Facebook. I thought to myself, I have email, I have trouble enough checking it as it is, and I'm getting enough spams and deleting them as it is. I don't need one more thing. I don't need one more intrusion in my private life. People just do not need to know how many ply toilet paper I am using in the bathroom, all right, as a Facebook update. So I resisted it until one day, it was my boss who got me to do it. She said, Jonipher, you are going to sign up for Facebook, and I am going to put it on your work plan as part of your job. So if you want to keep your job, you better sign on Facebook. So begrudgingly, she dragged me along. And I was not only an atheist, a staunch atheist when it comes to Facebook, but she was dragging me along, and so I said, okay, fine, we'll see what this new Facebook thing could do for us. And so pretty soon, I started making some friends on Facebook, and pretty soon, I was doing organizing work in Orange County, California, and after Prop 8 passed, we decided to have an interfaith service saying that there are people of faith who support marriage equality. So, however, we didn't have enough time to send out a paper invitation to the community or to hand out flyers even. We did, however, have time to create a Facebook events page. And so we decided to hold it at this teeny tiny church called Fairview Community Church in Costa Mesa, California. It could fit about 250 people at best. And this is a good Easter service that they would be able to fit this many people, even in the balcony, yeah? And so we said, you know, we'd be thrilled if we got 100 people to show up to this interfaith event. Well, guess how many people showed up that evening, that eve of justice? You cheated, Angelica. You were here for the 9:15 service. I'm going to dismiss that answer. But yes, that was the correct answer. 500 people showed up. We couldn't even fit everybody in the sanctuary, so we had people spilling out in the lawn and across the street. And these were new, young activists that had never, ever been involved in the social justice movement before, but suddenly they got all fired up because never in their lifetime would they have thought that a thing like Prop 8 could possibly pass in California. California, birthplace of the hippie movement. How could you pass Prop 8? So they showed up in droves, and thus started my conversion. I said, hallelujah, I have seen the light. This is the power of Facebook. You know, I couldn't believe it. And so today, I swear by it. And I must say too that it's not a bad thing to be a late bloomer like myself. Or even if you're a middle adapter or whatever label you want to call yourself in terms of accessing media. This congregation, for example, did you know that the whole use of PowerPoint for music and for video presentations used in churches started more than 20 years ago? That even when I was still a fundamentalist Christian going to a megachurch, we were already using this technology. Yet our church didn't officially install these screens until spring, March of 2013. And that was a wonderful grand gala opening of it. We featured the spring equinox service. Remember that, Jenna? We talked about fertile minds, yeah? And we had this beautiful images projected, accompanied by Vivaldi's Spring. So we took something old and something traditional and we adapted it, and we brought so much vibrancy and beauty to our sacred space because we were able to bring all these beautiful places from around the world right here to Honolulu, Hawaii. And that was thanks to the PowerPoint revolution that we did. And you want to know what comment I received from a young adult who actually grew up in this church? He came up to me and he said, "How did you actually get them to do that?" Which made me think, what? Do we have a culture in this congregation that doesn't want to, do something, try out something new? But anyway, I thought that was a great statement. And look where we are today. We have Roland filming us, and he's doing such a great job of it, being so faithful week in and week out, and he's actually donated a lot of his own time for us on our video recordings, and this only started February of 2013. Well, 1 year later, guess how many loads we have on a weekly basis? Guess how many people from all over the world are tuning in to our video services? 500. Do I hear a 600? Do I hear a 700? Try 1,000. Did somebody say 1,000? Was it Bethany? Okay, you win the prize, Bethany. Yay! Although I actually mentioned it in What's the Buzz, so you kind of cheated too. But we have a bunch of cheaters in this congregation. They're just creative, smart people who know how to use facts properly. Anyway, 1,000 loads. And can you believe that some of these people have never even set foot in our congregation? And already, you know what the implication of this is? They're already starting to pledge and contribute because they feel like we are doing the spiritual work that is needed to transform our world. And who wouldn't want to be a part of that? Who wouldn't want to invest in that? Who wouldn't want to spread the word near and far to everyone so that they too could hear that liberating message? They too could hear what I think is the real gospel or the real good news that people are yearning for and people are hungry for. Can I give an amen? Amen. Good. I'm glad you're still awake. All right. And in terms of here in our congregation and here in our first fair state of Honolulu itself, when we did this special session, one of our regular comers, Vin, I don't know how many of you remember her, she actually started a Facebook page for the Social Justice Council. Remember that? That gave us up-to-the-minute information on what bill is being heard and how our SB1 is progressing during the special session. And this was a great opportunity, again, for young people to get engaged in the legislative process, for them to know what is going on in their community, how they could empower themselves to make our world a fairer, more just, and equitable place to live in. This is the language that we need to keep speaking in order for us to connect with the next generation. If we don't, to be honest with you, we're just gonna get left behind. So I may not believe in that other kind of rapture, but I do believe in this rapture. All right? So there's, we gotta find a way to be able to translate our message and become fluent in this new language. All right, so I told you I'm going to leave you with the rest in a few weeks, so be sure to come back for that, because I'm going to be talking about the how. Now that I gave you the reason of why we need to learn this language, the how and the so what will come in the next few weeks. All right, so in the meantime, I'm going to have Megan Bunson come forward and tell us about her story of transformation here in our congregation. So Megan, please come on up.
Like Jonipher said, my name is Megan Bunson, and this morning I wanted to say thank you for all the ways that you as a community have welcomed me into the Unitarian faith. I found this congregation through the art gallery and never intended to make it my home. However, after the first service, I felt very eager to return. Jean and Shirley welcomed me to their coffee and snack covenant with smiles, interesting stories, and valuable discussions of current events. I slowly began to feel a part of the Unitarian community. When I was able to sing along to most of our songs, I realized I want and need music in my life. During coffee hour fellowship after church, I realized how much I enjoy multi-generational companionship. When I planted my feet firmly on the ground for a brief meditation Sunday after Sunday, I realized that I need to regularly quiet my mind. This community has slowly been fixing holes in my life that I didn't realize were there until they were mended. On the topic of mending, my family was most definitely held together by the thread of Unitarian compassion this last fall. After giving birth to my son Theo, I contracted a bad infection which left me unable to walk. The church pastoral care group rallied together and sent volunteers to my home. People helped me with laundry, caring for baby, bringing meals, and general pleasant conversation to calm my angst during a very difficult and trying healing process. My family is extremely grateful for all of those people, and the friendships that have come from that is, I could go on, and I did in the BUDS, so I was abbreviated, but we have a really, really fabulous pastoral care group, and I hope you don't ever need them, but if you do, they are wonderful. I'm also grateful for all the friendships that have begun to blossom within these walls. In so many ways, this congregation does now feel like home. With each service, I grow more aware of myself, this life, and the unlimited wonderment I can find when I open myself up to the whole beings of others. This congregation has helped me to remember to work on myself in productive, healthy, and compassionate ways. Each member of this church brings me joy in your own way. Your generosity empowers this beloved community to transform lives. Mahalo for growing our Unitarian Universalist witness throughout Hawaii. Thank you.